From Estero, Florida, this is a One Extraordinary Marriage show, where being busy is overdone, romancing is fun, and scheduling sex has taken the guesswork out of wondering when you're going to get some. I'm Tony DiLorenzo, your co-host, along with my beautiful wife, Elisa. From coast to coast and around the world, thank you for joining us. It's time to talk sex, love, and commitment. Give us a call or text us on the Hug Hotline at 858-876-5663, or send us an email to hugs@oneextraordinarymarriage.com. In today's episode, we're addressing some of the biggest sexual myths that are quietly sabotaging marriages.
There's an anonymous quote that says, most of our sexual expectations are formed not by truth, but by lies we've absorbed from our culture. And I think as we talk about the sexual myths that are quietly sabotaging marriages, it's something to keep in mind. Like, where's that information coming from, and where are those narratives being generated from? And before we do that, we start every episode with a hug. And a hug is really an opportunity for us to celebrate the one family, to celebrate where the two of you are being intentional in your marriage or the transformation that you're seeing. And this hug comes from a comment that was in the One Family private Facebook group that simply says, in the last month, my wife and I have had sex in my office, and I came home to a surprise of her cooking in the kitchen with only an apron on while the kids were out of the house. It's been a great month for changing things up. We're thankful for the one family and the podcast for helping our marriage stay fun and adventurous.
Right on.
That's pretty amazing.
I love it.
I love it. Absolutely. And, as we jump into today's episode, it's interesting. I love sometimes how the hugs kind of just piggyback on of, being adventurous and that type of thing when it comes to sex, and having that be the theme throughout this episode, because this idea of sexual myths really just comes out of some of the coaching conversations that I've had recently, but even collectively over the last, I've been coaching now for 13 years?
I think 12,
13. I don't know.
Yep.
Long time. But every once in a while, I'll go through these windows of time where I start hearing similar things, where it'll be statements, specifically when it comes to sexual intimacy, where it's, if my spouse really loved me, he or she would know what I need or want in bed without me having to say it. Or we must not be sexually compatible because our sex life doesn't look like what I think it should, or doesn't look like what's in the movies. Or, and this one I hear quite often, I feel like a failure because we don't always finish when we have sex. And so you can get into this place of, what are the narratives? What are these statements that are rattling around in your head? And how is that actually impacting your sexual intimacy, that closeness and connection, as Tony and I defined in the 6 Pillars of Intimacy, The Secret to an Extraordinary Marriage. The whole chapter on sexual intimacy talks about defining that as the closeness and connection when the two of you are engaged sexually. Not strictly in sexual intercourse, but in romance, initiating, and foreplay. And what are the expectations? And what are those statements, myths? And, y'all know I love a good definition from Merriam-Webster. According to Merriam-Webster.com, a myth is a popular belief or tradition that has grown up around something, but is not necessarily true. And I love that, because I think these statements that we're going to be digging into today's episode, they feel like they're true. They feel like they might have some basis, but they're not necessarily true. And what we're going to cover in today's episode is not an exhaustive list, please. Like, I could probably go on for about 4 days with all of the statements that people tell me about sexual intimacy, but in the interest of time and your listening pleasure, we're going to keep it short. But we're going to get into these statements because I think some of these are even ones that Tony and I have bought into ourselves. And we're going to be talking about that in the episode. But being in this place of, and I want to encourage you from the get-go, like, think about the things that you believe about sexual intimacy. Think about the statements, the narratives that sometimes create friction in your marriage because it doesn't feel like your sexual intimacy matches up to it or meets up with what that expectation is. And start questioning, even from the get-go of this episode, am I believing something that's like societally true, or society says this is the way it is? Or am I evaluating what is actually in our marriage? Don't just sit into this place of going, you know what, if everybody else says so, that must be it. But instead, get curious about what's happening in your own marriage and what your beliefs are about sexual intimacy.
Yeah, I say we just jump right on in, because here's the thing. Let's just be mythbusters today. Like, let's look at this as a way of all of us being mythbusters.
I love it.
And for many of you who don't know, there was a show at one point in time called Mythbusters, and it was all scientifically based and all
That
this
was a
sort of
good
stuff.
show. I enjoyed watching that
and
show.
it was fun to watch. But I think in marriage, sometimes we can just sit back and be like, well, that's just the way it is. And so myth number one, my spouse should know what I want without me saying it.
I love this one. There's a whole reason that we did episode 319 a million years ago, entitled ESP. And that was just collectively around like all aspects of marriage that, you know, your spouse should be able to read your mind. But I think this plays out so often in the bedroom. I mean, I've seen it ourselves, right? Like, you love me. You've told me that you love me. You should know what I want to do in the bedroom. Or we've been together for so long. You should know. I shouldn't have to tell you what I want to do sexually or what pleases me. You should just know or read my mind. And the problem with that, I mean, Tony and I have been married almost 20. I'm like looking at the calendars.
When this drops, actually, it'll be
just a few days before our 29th.
Yeah, probably like 5-6 days before our 29th.
Okay, so that's almost 3 decades. You guys, I'm just doing the math for you. We've changed a lot. And I will tell you, early days, I think we both expected the other to just simply know.
I still think today sometimes we do that.
100%. Like, yeah, I wasn't gonna minimize, but like, you look over that period of almost 3 decades, and we still have times. Definitely in the early days, because we weren't talking about sexual intimacy, so it was just kind of like we couldn't talk about it, so you're just kind of like hoping the other person knows, right? And then you get more recent times, and it's just like sometimes you forget that you still need to talk about sexual intimacy.
Right. At the end of the day, you have to allow the emotional intimacy to invade your sexual intimacy. Mm-hmm. And if we don't do that, this myth will perpetuate.
Oh, 100%.
And so the reason within the 6 pillars of intimacy, it's the first pillar is emotional intimacy. Mm-hmm. And I know for many of you, and for some of you, you have a spouse who's reluctant to talk about sexual intimacy or doesn't want to. So it's like there's this friction that happens in here. And this is where I do believe we need to address this even with somebody else and start getting out of our shell. Because if we don't, your spouse can't read your mind.
So when you say address this with somebody else, what do you mean?
Coaching.
Okay. I was just like...
counseling. In that, yeah. And I'm not saying with a third party you just are like friends with. I'm talking about somebody who can professionally walk the two of you through conversation that is needed.
Absolutely, because I was talking to another coach this week, and we were just talking about the work that we do and whatnot, and she was saying how she doesn't do much in the marriage space, and I said, well, that's I talk marriage and sex all the time, and I said, my goal always is to really normalize these conversations. We need to, the way you bust this myth is to get into a place where you start normalizing the conversations around sexual intimacy.
That's right.
Right.
Myth 2. Great sex should always be spontaneous.
Oh my gosh. You guys, we have heard this since the very, very first time we talked about scheduling sex. I can still picture the small group that we were in, the church that we were attending. We were leading a small group. We met in one of the rooms in the church. And we talked about scheduling sex, the intimacy lifestyle. And I'll never forget this interaction between this husband and wife, because he's like, I just think it should be spontaneous. Like, that's the way it should go. And his wife massive side-eyed him and looked at her, and was just like, to the entire group, how's that working out for you? And you could have heard a pin drop.
And it was, let me tell you this, leading a group and having that interaction happen, you definitely are like Oh boy.
Oh, boy.
What's just about to go down because you don't know where this is going to go. So if you've facilitated a small group and people have said stuff and you're just like, what the, been there, done that. And Elisa brings that up, man, that had to have been 15 odd years ago. I would probably say like 15 years ago.
Because 2008 is when we did the 60-day sex challenge. So it was probably 2009 or 2010.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
15. So that is truth. I mean, I just remember that going, and she's right. Because if we just look at this and go, wow, it should always be spontaneous. And we've done episodes on this as well. What does that look like? Is that actually happening for you?
And is it happening as often as you think it should or you want it to, or the movies portray it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm just going to go back to the fact that movies can make it seem like everybody at the drop of a dime is given that one look and then you somehow end up naked. And I think the reality for most marriages is that that's not happening nearly as often as being intentional about your sexual intimacy, and even going so far as to schedule. And I will say, once again, like we've said on so many episodes, that does not mean putting it on the calendar Tuesday at 9:07 p.m. But it's looking at your week, looking at your month and saying, what are the best days for us so that we can both be thinking about it and being intentional. Right.
And if we don't, it really does go by the wayside. Mm-hmm. And it really can. And so the truth of this, planning and anticipation actually enhances your sexual intimacy. And so when you plan and then the anticipation part of it, you're going to be able to have more sex than if it's spontaneous. Mm-hmm. All right, myth 3. Successful sex always ends in orgasm.
Survey says no.
Nope.
I feel like that was a Family Feud moment right there.
Yes.
But true, false, and you're like, no, it doesn't. It doesn't, because couples will achieve orgasm at different times. It doesn't because there are many in the one family that, because of health reasons or whatnot, are not able to orgasm. I will tell you where I was at 22 when I married Tony versus where I am at 51, and how orgasm has changed over that 29-year period with perimenopause, with children, with pregnancies, all of those types of things. It's not always a given.
Nope.
Right? And, we've talked about this in the past, but I think just bringing it into this myth busting show, which I totally love being a myth buster. That's awesome. Is that, it's one outcome, but it's not the measure of success mm-hmm. in terms of developing closeness and connection between the two of you.
Yep. And so that is the truth. Orgasm is one possible outcome, not the only measure of success of having an amazing sexual intercourse experience. Mm-hmm. Myth 4, real sex looks like what you see in the movies, or dare we say in porn. And when I say even porn anymore, I will even extend that out to sites like OnlyFans / Instagram, like fitness influencers / TikTok,
romance novels,
anything there media. Anymore, right? Like back in the day, and I'm going to say back in the day because I'm getting older. But when I was a kid, it was magazines, mm-hmm. and maybe the XXX stuff that you could find on some shady cable stuff if you could break into your dad's like satellite system type deal.
Not that you would know anything about that.
Not that I would know anything about that. Today, that looks very, very different. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to put brackets around that so people just don't tell me it's like, well, it's not like what it used to be, Tony. I get it. I understand. There's many a ways. So real sex doesn't look like that, though.
Mm-hmm. It's choreographed. It doesn't matter, whether you're reading about it in a romance novel or you're watching it on TV. Everything is scripted. It's edited. It's being performed by actors. Straight up. Those are people acting or have been written into a scene. It's entertainment. It's not sex ed. Right? And so understanding that and coming to this place of, hey, sometimes like the sexual intimacy the two of you are going to have, it's going to be awkward. It's going to be funny. There are going to be interruptions. Like all of these things actually happen when a husband and wife are being sexually intimate. And I will also say, most of us don't have bodies that are routinely being airbrushed or photoshopped or any of those other types of things. We are real people with real bodies that look all like across the spectrum. And so the expectation that it's going to be just like it is in the movies, again, violins playing in the background and mood lighting and all the perfect things, sets you up for frustration. Instead of saying, hey, we are real people engaged in real sexual intimacy.
Yep. And real people, married couples, have to communicate what they want, which is...
Because again, it's not written into the script.
Right. And that goes up to, again, myth 1.
Right.
My spouse should know what I want without asking. So myth 5, if we have sexual problems, our marriage is broken.
Not true. Not true. Sexual challenges, and I've seen this in so many marriages that I've worked with, you have to investigate where those sexual challenges are coming from. It doesn't mean that your marriage is irreparably broken. It doesn't mean that you can't, repair, restore, rebuild. It really, in a lot of cases I've seen is, what's happening in your sexual intimacy is also symptomatic of what might be happening throughout your marriage. Mm-hmm. Right? A lot of times the sexual intimacy will fall off a cliff because there's all kinds of other stuff that isn't being talked about or hasn't been dealt with.
Well, there's other cracks in the other pillars.
Exactly. And so, it's looking at your marriage as a whole, not just saying, well, if this is not working, then let's toss out. It's the whole, what's that expression? Like toss out the baby.
Be with the bathwater.
Yes, that one. But, it's making a decision. And I think we've been talking about it through as each one of these myths of what's the underlying message? What's the underlying thing that's going on in your marriage? And why are you thinking that way? And getting into this place of understanding how those myths are impacting your marriage. And we're going to talk about that after this break. I love GoPure, and I'm excited to share this with you. Living here in Southwest Florida, I definitely think about sun exposure, especially on my neck. I've seen what happens when we don't take care of it. We spend so much time caring for our face, but what about our neck? Even heading into fall, this area is still exposed with open collars and V-necks. Neck skin is thinner and more delicate than facial skin, making it especially vulnerable. That's where GoPure's Tighten and Lift Neck Cream comes in. I've been using it, and honestly, I love how my neck looks and feels. This powerful formula is packed with clinically proven ingredients that visibly firm and smooth in as little as 4 to 8 weeks. All GoPure products are cruelty-free, paraben-free, and sulfate-free. With over 1 million jars sold, this beauty secret is no longer a secret. For a limited time, our listeners get 25% off GoPure with code MARRIAGE at checkout. Just head to gopure.com, use code MARRIAGE, and you're all set. And after you buy, do us a favor. When they ask where you heard about GoPure, tell them it was from our show.
Routine, adjective. Used to describe an individual whose spirit is unyielding, unconstrained, one who navigates life on their own terms, effortlessly. They do not always show up on time, but when they arrive, you notice. An individual confident in their contradictions. They know the rules, but behave as if they do not exist. Routine, the new fragrance by Miu Miu, defined by you.
We're back, and we've been having a little bit of fun, little family feud, true or false fun around these sexual myths and how they've been impacting marriages. And we've talked about the five big ones that I hear most often, but we've got to understand that these myths start to create expectations that set couples up for disappointment. Right? When you think it should be spontaneous and you're not having spontaneous sex, when you think that your spouse should just know what you want or need and they don't, you can get into the cycle of frustration, of resentment, of anger. It starts to create all kinds of friction and tension, both in the bedroom and out of the bedroom, and can really create like a shutdown around your communication, withdrawal from even physical intimacy or recreational intimacy of spending time together. And the focus becomes like the aspirational nature of those myths instead of how do we create our own extraordinary marriage. Let's not live in mythology. I was going to say mythland, but let's not live in a place of mythology. Let's live and create extraordinary in our own marriages.
Mm-hmm. And I just think of these myths and how do we address them so that way we can lay them aside.
Sure.
And I know they'll creep in because, as you said, within the with the definition there, it's one of those things that is meant to be believed by a whole group, right? And so it can take a bit to go, that's false. That's not real. Mm-hmm. And so we need to take some time to go through these just real quickly with you and talk about how do we start putting those myths behind? Because what may be happening is you're holding on to them.
Wow.
And they're just weighing you down. And it could be one of you, it could be both of you. For some of you, you're listening to this and you're like, man, I've been holding on to that for a while. And because of that, we haven't been sexually intimate with I haven't been sexually intimate with my spouse. And even that is going to take some coming to your spouse and talking about it, because there's probably going to be some hurt and there's going to probably be some pain. Like, there's some real issues that happen here, folks. When you as a married couple are not being sexually intimate, there's real pain that happens. I hear it. It is, I don't know how to say it, but it's tough. How many married couples, this is the thing that binds us together. The only thing that we do, right? Us, you and me. And how many of you neglect it? And I'm dare to say that some of these myths have permeated you so deeply that you think that's the way it's supposed to be. And so we got to break those a little bit, because you got to realize we live in reality. And sometimes in reality, maybe we haven't scheduled sex. Maybe we haven't had sex in a while. And we need to address that with our spouse. Not going to say it's easy. Not going to say it's all that and then. But again, if you need help, I would suggest you apply for coaching. Go to oneextraordinarymarriage.com/coaching. Apply. Before I had to say that before we get into these solutions.
It's all good.
Like I just hear I've heard it too much lately, folks, and it's heartbreaking. Sometimes it's hard to read. I'm gonna just tell you that. It like I become numb to it because it's so dang heartbreaking. And it comes from both sides. Mm-hmm. Husbands withdrawing, wives withdrawing. Like, for goodness sakes, man, if we want to have extraordinary marriages, we got to do something different. And even for Elisa and I, sometimes we have to look at ourselves in the mirror and go, what the heck? What are we doing? Like, if we want to have extraordinary marriages, then we're going to have to do something different. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's one of these myths or all 5 of these myths that you've been holding on to, going like, this is how it's going to be perfect. And the only way we're going to have sex was when all of these align perfectly. I'm going to just tell you now, and I'm going to burst your bubble now, it's not going to happen. It just isn't. Life happens. Crap happens. But it doesn't mean you stop being sexually intimate with your spouse. Now, again, we talked about last week about chronic health issues, things of that nature. Got it. Understand. Process working. I understand. You can say, well, Tony, I get it. There's a journey we're all on. Mm-hmm. And yet if you're stuck on a rock, sitting on a rock and haven't moved off that rock for 2 years, then it might be time to start moving. Because that's not fair to you and it's not fair to your spouse. All right. I'm done with my tirade. I apologize for that, but man, it's been tough. Like, no kidding. The last month has been tough. And I listen to this and I see this, and it really just has, as you can tell, impacted me. I mean, just even this morning, reading something that we posted and the explicitives on a comment that I had to delete. And I can feel, and I know the hurt, and I know the pain. And yet, we just sit around, go on our own merry way, thinking everything's going to be okay. And it's okay if we don't be sexually intimate, or we're not even emotionally intimate with our spouse anymore about these topics. You know? And we think it's just going to be okay. And maybe this is just even for Elisa and I. Like, we've had a week ourselves. And just being able to address some of these things and come together and talk, even in those times of hurt and pain and frustration with one another. So, I'll let you take it from here, baby doll.
I know somebody are listening, they're like, that was awesome, Tony. And a few of you feel a little poked, and that's okay. Regardless of which side of the fence that you're on. You know, we never promised when we started this show in January of 2010 that you were going to get anything less than us being open, honest, and transparent. And I think it's the reality of doing an episode like this, of letting you all know that this isn't just something that maybe you've heard somebody talk about. Like, we get emails, DMs, you know, comments on posts all of the time from both husbands and wives who are struggling in their marriage because sexual intimacy has not been made a priority. It's been allowed to fall to the wayside or not be valued in the marriage. And so, yeah, do we get a little fired up about this? 100%. Do we do episodes like this around looking at these myths to say, hey, we want you to have an incredible, extraordinary marriage. We do believe that sexual intimacy, to the best of your abilities, based on health and illness and whatnot, what that looks like for you. It's why we expanded the definition of sexual intimacy in the 6 pillars of intimacy, so that it wasn't just, did we or did we not have intercourse? But to be able to say, hey, if we open up this whole definition that it can be how you are sexually intimate, that it's romance, initiating, foreplay, then that actually gives you a whole lot more tools to be able to say, what can I do? What can we do? It's why, you know, myth number 1 is talking about, you know, expecting your spouse to, my spouse should just know what I want without me having to say it. And I'm going to say, as I said when Tony first brought that up, nuh-uh. Right? Get specific. Tell your spouse what you enjoy, what feels good, what you want to try, whatever that looks like. And don't, if you're on the receiving end of that information, please do not get defensive. Your spouse just got vulnerable with you.
Yep.
Right?
Stop expecting mind reading to work.
Period.
That's it. Like, solution 1 to myth 1, stop expecting your spouse to know what you're thinking. Express yourself.
Look at that information as a roadmap to pleasure, not a criticism.
Yep.
Right? Myth number 2, right? This is the whole one about, you know, spontaneous sex. Like, what happens if you choose to embrace intentional intimacy? That if you know that it's going to be happening within a window. Again, I'm not saying it has to be Tuesday at 9:07 or Saturday morning at 10:10 a.m. or whatever. I mean, for some of you that's helpful just because of the season of life that you're in. So I'm not saying you can't do that. But if you know that's going to happen in windows, you can prepare. You can start engaging in foreplay. You can have the anticipation, right? That makes a difference. Anticipation is part of foreplay. It is, you know, this place where, like, all of your neural pathways, your body, everything starts firing at a different frequency because of the anticipation. So don't poo-poo it. And once it's scheduled, whatever that day window time is, commit to showing up mentally and physically ready to connect. Don't just put it on the calendar and be like, you know, so whatever, and you just kind of like lay there like a bump on a log. Be present. It will change the sexual encounter for both of you.
I agree. Myth and solution for number 3, you know, successful sex always ends in orgasm. Well, let's redefine sexual success.
That's powerful.
What does that look like for us in this season? And there were times when Elisa would an orgasm. There have been times when I have not ejaculated. We have to have a redefinition of what that success looks like. Now, you may succeed in intercourse, and yet for yourselves, you're looking at redefining sexual success. What does your foreplay look like? What's your romancing look like? What's your initiating look like? those are other areas that you can look at and go, how do we redefine that? Case in point, last night, Elise and I were sexually intimate. I will say, and this is something that we have been practicing because we're redefining this myth. Foreplay, for us, is the main course.
100%.
And the more we engage in foreplay, I would say for us, the sexual experience overall is more enjoyable. Saturday, we were up in Nashville. We had morning sex. It was more of a quickie. It was like, okay, it was good. And yet the comparison of what we see as redefining sexual success is, how are we really engaging ourselves in foreplay?
And I will even go and say there was a season in our marriage where sexual success was, did we or did we not?
Absolutely was. There was definitely one. All right, let's get into myth 4. Real sex looks like what you see in movies. The solution is choose reality over fantasy. Mm-hmm. And that's straight up. Mm-hmm. Whatever you are watching, whatever you are seeing, I don't care if it's on movies, again, porn, larger definition, in those brackets, any of those other places, those are actors.
Dude, that's such...
It's like Elisa said, it's entertainment. It's not education. If anything around this myth, that is it. It's entertainment, not education. We are here to educate, to give you reality, to share with you the highs and lows of marriage, in which we have been doing for the last 15 and a half years. This is reality. Would it be nice to be able to just sit there on the couch and everything be great and ready, and Elisa comes in lingerie and she is whisked in and the lights are perfect and this and that and she hugs me and this, and then the next scene we're just lying in bed with a blanket on us? I guess, but that isn't reality. So we are busting myth 4.
Sorry, I was playing out that scenario in my head, and I'm like, and the other part, like, if I can just talk about this for just a second, like, you don't have any of that connection, right? It's so, like, if you actually think what's happening behind the scenes, there's no real connection there. There are people like watching and doing, like, it's awkward. Mm-hmm. Stop thinking that that's what you want. It's not about being perfect on a movie screen or anything like that. It's about being fully present in the moment that you are there with your husband or your wife.
Yep. And myth 5, if we have sexual problems, our marriage is broken. The solution to this is look at the bigger picture.
It's looking at all of your pillars of intimacy. It's saying, hey, if we're having sexual problems right now, what else is going on in our marriage? Don't just look at that and get so fixated on that you forget to look at every area of your marriage and acknowledge, what else is going on. Are there health issues? Are there financial stressors? Are you going through stuff with your kids that is just keeping you in this place? But get to the root issue. Don't just focus on sexual intimacy as a symptom of what's going on.
Yeah. And as we end up today here, I'm going to just give you some action steps that you can take. This is what you can do this week. Pick one myth that resonates with you. That's honestly, just like pick one of them and just go, okay. And now it's time to have an honest conversation with your spouse about it this week. Mm-hmm. That's the action. We got to engage in the emotional intimacy part of this. We cannot just sit around and myth 1 and expect our spouse to read our mind. So let's break that myth right now. Agree to put intimacy on your calendar. Start the intimacy lifestyle. Begin to do it. What does it look like for you? Because each of us are looking at ways to strengthen all of our pillars of intimacy. Mm-hmm. And let me just say this one last thing. If your spouse asks you something and they're engaging you, please don't say, I don't know. And if you do have an I don't know, do an I don't know, and yet I'll come up with something and talk to you this evening about it, or tomorrow about it. Engage with one another, folks. Don't send me the DMs that you're not having sex. Engage with one another. You can still send them. It's okay. I get it.
You can send them. But ultimately, remember that extraordinary marriages are built by people willing to challenge these myths, that are willing to push through and do the work to get on the other side of this. It's not just to accept all of these myths as gospel truth and sit in that place, but to say, hold up, what have I believed about sexual intimacy in my marriage?
Mm-hmm.
And what am I going to do about it? And what are we going to do about it?
That is it. You guys have yourselves a fantastic week. Thank you for joining us. Honestly, again, another episode like last week, another episode where we just got to be open, honest, and transparent about some things. And it's okay, because this is life. This is the real thing. This is what's going on. Go out there, have an extraordinary marriage. If you haven't, jump into the 6 pillars of intimacy. Go do it. Learn about them, strengthen them, and have your extraordinary marriage. You guys have yourselves a great one. We'll catch you next week. Love you guys. Thank you for listening to the One Extraordinary Marriage Show. If you love this podcast, please leave a review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you are listening. Your review helps others find the show and know that it's the right fit for them and their marriage.